We just had the finals of the EU Divisional Cup. I'm going to break down which teams did well, who struggled. We've also got a bunch of new duos to talk about. Let's get straight into it. So this was the 5th Divisional Cup of the season, and for the first time this chapter we have a 2-time winner on EU, and they are of course Sky and Scroll. Now they won the first Divisional Cup all the way back in week 1. They probably have been the best team in the region. They've looked unbelievable. They won the Unreal Cup right at the start of the chapter. Scroll also won the solo series, and listen, it's gone a bit quiet with these guys, but their performances haven't really dropped off. It's definitely been weird because people have been speaking about them as if they've completely fallen off, but that's not been the case at all. They've made every single Divisional Cup Finals, and they finished inside the top 10 in all of them. And honestly, it's worth noting that they probably would have been making it into the top 5s had it not been for their drop spot situation, because they land at Battlewood Boulevard, because there's so many teams that drop there. It did feel like they were getting dragged into fights in a lot of these cups, and that was the reason why they were unable to place super high. But listen, they put that all past them yesterday with an incredible first place finish. They really made it work from their drop spot. Yes, they had 2 teams landing at the south side, but they were fighting each other, so Sky and Scroll weren't really interfered with too much, and they of course made it count. They had a relatively slow start, but they were able to win game 5, making sure that going into that final game they were the team to beat, and of course they held on to the lead. It's hard to believe that under 6 months ago this duo actually split. If you remember, Sky went off to play with Marius, and that obviously did not work out, and of course they reunited. Sky and Scroll have such incredible chemistry. They are a top quality team, and I do firmly believe they will be one of the contenders to win Major 1. Certainly I do believe they will win an FNCS this year. They are at that level. One thing that I want to point out with these guys is that they have won in the week where the meta has shifted a little bit. We have pumps back in the game, scars are back, balloons are now in, and listen, clearly Sky and Scroll are very adaptable. They won the Unreal Cup not long after the chapter started. They also won the first Divisional Cup, and now that the meta has changed, they've gone and won again. Clearly these guys are great at responding to meta changes. Yes, I know it wasn't the craziest shift ever, but it is still new items that get added, and it does change the way teams play, and Sky and Scroll once again have proved themselves as the most adaptable duo in EU. And this is an interesting point, because the next FNCS, there isn't a huge gap between the start of the season and the FNCS Grand Finals, and because of that I feel like adaptability will be a huge consideration, and that's why a couple of months ago I was saying that Cammy and Hari had a great chance to win Major 1, because they are also very adaptable. They're great at understanding new metas quickly, and listen, Sky and Scroll have the same ability. They've got a great shot at winning. And just to go over their achievements one more time: 2 Divisional Cup wins, top 10 in every single Div Cup this season, Unreal Cup winners, Scroll won the solo series. They've been the standout team this chapter across all the regions. They've just been so good, and I'm really excited to see how they do going into the new season. In second place we had Darm and Demuś, and this is the first time this chapter that these guys have properly showed their quality. They were obviously exceptional last year, managing a 3rd place in Major 2 with picks, and also coming 6th at their first ever globals. Up until yesterday we were yet to see those standards replicated. They've not been bad by any means. They are making the Divisional Cups. They're getting okay placements, but they weren't really threatening to make that top 5. That has all changed though. They were excellent yesterday. They had the most average eliminations out of all the teams in the lobby. Demuś had the most damage and the most eliminations, an absolutely dominant performance from him. And listen, it could have been a different story. Only a 10-point gap separating them from Sky and Scroll in first. Had they just stayed alive for a little bit longer in that final game, then they could have taken the win. But these are the fine margins that we have in Fortnite tournaments, and it's why EU is so entertaining. To run down the rest of the leaderboard, in 3rd place we had Sayaz and Scary Sean. These guys are without a doubt the best Spanish team in the world right now. They're looking brilliant. They had the highest average placement out of all the teams in this tournament. Clearly that is their play style. I do believe that these guys should be aiming to make the Summit LAN. If you don't know, the top 20 teams from EU Major 1 will qualify for the Summit LAN in Düsseldorf, and I do believe that Sayaz and Scary Sean should be aiming for that top 20. Potentially could they even make globals? Might be a bit of a step too far. There's so many top teams in in EU, that is a difficult ask. But these guys are looking great, and if they're able to come third in these type of lobbies, then the Summit LAN should be their goal. Truly and Zynox came in 4th. This is a very underrated team, one that has been looking good this chapter so far. In week 3 they managed to come 6th, and they have gone better than that with this 4th place finish, another top placement, showing no signs of slowing down. Very excited to see their future. Another underrated duo that also performed was Shura and Repairs. Now these guys came 5th last week, and they did that again this week, also managing a 5th place. Listen, these guys have a strategy that works. They land at their split on the south side of the map, and they're kind of surrounded by chaos there because you've got all the teams landing at Battlewood to their west, you've got all the teams landing at the desert area to the east, and because of that, because of how congested it is, they can really take advantage of all the chaos, capitalizing on the teams around them. They can get a lot of damage. They don't really play in the storm much, they tend to rotate into the zone quite early, but they're really making it work for them at the moment, so big credit to them. Repairs especially has been really explosive in these cups. He was joint 2nd for eliminations. He is someone that is in great form at the moment. After 3 games of the tournament, they were in 2nd place, so potentially they could have finished even higher. But listen, 5th this week, 5th last week. It's been a great couple of tournaments for these guys. Interested to see what they'll do in the final week of the Divisional Cup. In 6th place, we had Shark and Teeny. Now listen, it's an interesting one with these guys because yes, they were contested, but they also beat Hutty and Fishy X 6-0 quite comfortably, if I'm honest. I will speak about Hutty and Fishy X pretty briefly because they were awful off spawn. I mean, there's no real way of sugarcoating it. They were terrible. Their drops in some of the games were genuinely horrendous. They landed on the river in game 3 where there aren't even any gun spawns, and they immediately got eliminated. In game 4 they dropped way too high and got beamed out of the sky. I mean, it was just a disaster from them, and realistically they shouldn't be contesting a team of this quality again, but I somehow don't think it will be the last time we see them there. Shark and Teeny made light work of them, winning 6-0, Hutty and Fishy X ending in last place without a single point on the board. But listen, for all those wins, Shark and Teeny couldn't quite make it count. They just struggled with a couple of the games. It wasn't really their tournament. 6th place overall is a solid finish. It is about where I predicted them. But listen, considering they won all the spawn fights, I think they would have expected to do a little bit better. In 7th place, we had Akira and Karama. And listen, these guys were really good throughout the tournament. They were actually in 1st place after 4 games. Unfortunately, a 12th and a 29th in their last 2 matches meant they weren't even able to get inside the top 5, so maybe they'll see that as a missed opportunity, but ultimately 7th isn't a bad finish. In 8th place we had Swizzy and Pixie, which, considering they were contested at Lethal Labs by Noah and Vampy, isn't too bad a placement. They did struggle to play out a lot of their games. They were only able to properly manage 3 games to the end game, and they did come 1st and 3rd in 2 of those, so clearly when they had the chances they were making it count. Had they not been contested, if they are Uncon in the future, it will be really exciting to see how they can do, because this is a duo that obviously have so much quality. It will be interesting to see what their ceiling is if they are uncontested. In 9th place we had Acer and Podesai. I predicted them to come 9th and they did finish 9th. This is about where I see them, honestly. I don't think they're the type of duo that are going to be breaking into the top 5 regularly, but they are very solid. They are a top quality team, and they are one that I do believe could make the Summit LAN. In 10th place we had the defending champions of Focus and Thomas HD. Now, listen, the defending champions haven't been able to get back-to-back wins all season, and this was no exception. Focus and Thomas weren't bad by any means, but it wasn't really their tournament. Focus did tweet saying that he felt he didn't play well. He also didn't enjoy some of the zone pulls. Listen, 10th place isn't the end of the world, but I did expect more based on the fact that they had uncontested Riptides and based on their performances over the past few weeks. They did also kill MrSavage and Velo in a couple of their games, and I'll speak about that in a minute. Just quickly, I want to talk about Belusi and Zangi as well. They finished in 11th, just outside of the top 10, but they were great all tournament. They actually won game 4, and the reason why I'm so impressed that they finished this high is because they were contested at that south side of Battlewood Boulevard, so the fact they managed to nearly finish in the top 10 despite this situation, very impressive stuff. So now let's get into some of the big teams that finished outside of the top 10. In 12th place we had my prediction to win, which was Vico and Malabuka, and listen, these guys have been in great form lately. They have come 2nd in the past 2 divisional cups. They qualified for the Esports World Cup recently, but yesterday they just couldn't make it work, and a lot of the reason for that is because because they weren't getting eliminations on the board. Across 6 games, they only had 10 kills, which really just isn't good enough, especially when you consider the fact that Vico has been top for damage and eliminations in so many of these tournaments lately, and yesterday that just was not the case. He wasn't even in the top 10 for kills, neither was Malabuka. Listen, this is uncharacteristic for this team. We do know that they can do a lot better than this, but it has to be said, they had that mountain split completely uncontested in 6 out of 6 games, and you would be expecting them to break into at least the top 10 with that kind of a situation. We know how good that drop is, we know how good their mid-game strategy is. They build up these massive ramps and they're able to wingsuit into zone late without taking any damage. With the strategy they have, with the systems they've built, I would expect a little bit more. Over at Bumpy Bay, the spawn fight between iDrop and Marius and Cammy and Hari unsurprisingly yielded no winners. iDrop and Marius finishing in 13th place. I mean, considering they were contested, that's actually not too bad. They only had 2 games inside the top 30, but they made those count with a 2nd and a 5th. I really want to know what the ceiling for these guys is if they're uncontested. Cammy and Hari did have a chance to be uncon in one of the weeks. They didn't quite make it count. I really want to see what happens if iDrop and Marius get that chance. Maybe it will happen next week, who knows. There's been talk that these guys could maybe split. I personally don't think that's going to happen this season, and the reason why is because they have just been contested in all their tournaments. We haven't had a chance to see how they would do from an uncon POI, and I do believe that if they did have that opportunity, they would be doing a lot better. So listen, I don't think iDrop and Marius are going to split until at least the start of next season. They need to have a couple more tournaments to give it a chance, because I do see a lot of potential with this duo. As we all know, Bumpy Bay is pretty likely to get removed the next season, so they will need to be looking for a new drop with a new POI in a fresh meta. Let's see how they get on. Cammy and Hari ended up coming in 25th. They were definitely affected by the off-spawn situation. They also had a bunch of game crashes, which I know they weren't happy about. Not a great tournament from them. In 15th, we had Chino and Pablo Wingu. Yet again, it's so difficult to predict these guys because they land over at Sandy Strip, which is of course such a big POI that they're never going to get it fully uncon, and because of that, you never know if they're going to split, if they're going to fight off spawn. It just felt like whenever I was watching them, they were just being dragged into mid-game fights. In the early game as well, just constantly they couldn't get out of the fights. They were always being interfered with, and I do believe that did kind of affect them. Listen, they couldn't build on their 4th place finish from last week, but 15th isn't terrible. I'm sure we'll see them bounce back in week 6. Savage and Velo. Now, this was the first time we saw them play together. This is of course a new duo, and I have to say the early signs are very encouraging. Yes, 17th isn't exactly a incredible placement by any means, but you have to look at the context. They got camped on in 2 games by Thomas HD and Focus, so games 1 and 3 were kind of write-offs because of that. They were playing in the Storm, and you know, when you get camped on, it's difficult to do anything. Savage also got killed out of the air by Focus in game 6. Their run-ins with that duo really did affect their chances at performing well. But ultimately, when we did see them getting to the end games, when they were having the chances to do well, they looked really good. And I mentioned this in my previous video, but I'll say it again. The dynamic here makes so much sense. Savage has the freedom to be the leader, to execute the game plan he wants to, and Velo is entirely devoted to ensuring that that game plan is carried out. He will play the support role, he will play for Savage, and that dynamic does make sense. And finally, in 29th place, we had Mumsy and Sato, and this is a team that have now officially split. I'll speak about that a little bit more later on, but listen, these guys did underperform from uncontested Painted Palms. I would have expected a lot more. They actually won one of the Divisional Cups back in Chapter 6 Season 4, so we do know that they can do well in set lobby finals, but the performances haven't been too good for a little while now. Yes, they did well in the Esports World Cup Qualifier 1, but that was a month or 2 ago now. It's not been great, and the split does make sense. We'll see who they go and play with. Right, into my predictions, and as you can see, it's a very mixed bag. I got the top 3 completely wrong, none of them really close to being in first place. However, you can see that some of the others are pretty solid. Sky and Scroll was only 3 placements off. Shark and Teeny and Shura and Repairs, if you swap them, then I actually had them completely right. I had Acer and Podicide bang on in 9th place, so I'm not too unhappy with this. Let me know how you got on in the comments below. And just before I talk about the Eval Cup, here's a list of all the EU teams that qualified for the NA Central Finals. As you can see, Akira and Karama were the highest placing team, coming in 17th. They were actually inside the top 5 after 2 games because they came 6th and 3rd. They did fall off a little bit after that, but 17th is still very solid. Credit to them. Now I am going to get into all the new confirmed duos on EU, but before then, let's discuss Thursday's Evaluation Cup. We had Focus and Thomas HD win game 1. They also managed a 2nd place in game 2. Credit to them. The 2nd game was won by the new Italian duo of Radion and Bimbo. Credit to them. Phantom was obviously previously with Radion. He has now gone back to playing with his old teammate Calais Jr. The 3rd game was won by Shark and Teeny. No shocks there. And the 4th match by Moneymaker and Fanayan. Now let's get into some duo news. We now know that Ping and Kiro have officially split. This is a team that were looking really good straight after Globals. They had a series of high Divisional Cup placements, but into the Simpsons season, into Chapter 7, it did kind of go a bit quiet. They've not been as impressive. The split did feel like it was coming, and it has officially happened. So in terms of their new duos from the Eval Cup, Kiro played with Roban, Ping played with Uppal, and that meant that Dan Depuzo needed a new teammate, so he played the tournament with Werex. That's a pretty exciting duo actually. Interested to see how they'll get on. We do now know though that Ping and Uppal won't be playing together anymore. Uppal tweeted that he is looking for a new teammate. I do wonder whether we might see the return of Ping and Wox. That was obviously a duo that did great in Chapter 5, and with Vanya and Wox struggling so much, they only managed 38th in yesterday's Divisional Cup. I know they were contested, but even so, they've really not been great lately. Could we see the return of Ping and Wox? I think it could be on the cards. We also now know that Skyjump and Dew have split. I have to say I'm kind of surprised by this. This was a team that did look pretty solid. In some of the early Divisional Cups this chapter, they were placing well. They are no longer a team. We'll have to wait until tomorrow to find out who their new teammates are. I'll chuck a list up on screen of all the new duos that we have seen from the Eval Cup. As you can see, a lot of French teams here, which is why I wonder if that Mumsy and Sato split might cause a chain reaction, and we might see some of these teams potentially split as soon as they've formed. We'll have to wait and see on that one. Artskill and Marco is an interesting one. Artskill recently tweeted that he wants to stop IGLing. He wants to play as the fragger, so playing with Marco does make a lot of sense. And Nosif and Izzy look really exciting as well. They did play the last Divisional Cup together, provided that they stick together, provided that neither one of them goes off and plays with Mumsy and Sato, then I'm sure they are going to do well. The last duo news to comment on is the rumour that Flixie wanted to play with Veno back when he was still in EU. Here's the clip.
Yeah, he told me to come back to EU and play EU.
Yo.
Flixie DM Veno to play EU?
Yes. So like,
does Chap know about this?
Good. Yes.
Oh. No.
Now he does.
It's like he got leaked on the stream by Vex. So that means that Vex, then Flixie could play with Marius, you know, and then like whatever, that could happen stuff.
Flixie and Marius, huh? Fox leaked it? Oh.
Now this is definitely an interesting clip. Don't get me wrong though, I don't think there's any chance we see Flixie playing with Veno. Veno is very committed to staying in NA Central. He is now playing with Curve and he seems to want to build with him. We'll have to see if that duo sticks, whether Veno goes off and plays with a Bolts. That is potentially on the cards. But listen, Veno is not coming back to EU for a while, which means Flixie and Chap is going to be the duo. Whether or not they stick, whether or not the seeds of doubt have already been sown, I mean their performances lately haven't been too good, and a split could potentially be on the cards. We'll have to see how that goes. There probably is one big EU snake inning that will happen before Major 1. Let's wait and see. In other news, we had the $1,000 Boop Cup yesterday. This was played on his brand new creative map, which is a 32-player late game simulator. It was 20 rounds with $50 to the player that won in each round. We had 32 of the best pros in EU playing, and of those 20 rounds, 6 of them were won by Focus. I mean, that is incredible consistency. He also won 5 of the first 10, looking really good, showing why he is one of the best mechanical fighters in EU. We also had Shark win 3 times, Phantom, the Middle East player, winning twice. I'll put a full list up on screen now so you can see all the players that earned. It was a fun tournament to watch. In other news, we had Cringe signed for XP42, which is a cool signing, but is incredibly confusing. We already have 2 Cringes on EU. There is the Swiss Cringe and King Cringe, who is from Scotland, and they are now both signed to the same organisation. So that has made it so much more confusing for casual fans to know who is who. And yeah, just thought I'd point that out because that's kind of funny, but congrats to Cringe for the signing. Listen, that is going to do it for this video. Please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any European Fortnite news. If you want to support me any further, then using code SPODSON in the Fortnite item shop is a great way to do that. Thanks for watching, see you in the next one.